A couple of years ago, we were up in Cambridge for a hockey tournament. My son Micah, who was about 7 or 8 at the time, they had a tournament up there, and they had played a couple games on Friday and a game on Saturday, and they made it to the next round. And so they played Saturday afternoon, and that meant they made the semifinals. And now the semifinals is Saturday night. Now we were going up against a very strong team, so we thought, you know what, the chances of winning is pretty slim. So we checked out of the hotel and thought, you know what, worst case scenario, we'll check back in, but why pay for a night where you're going to have to go home anyway, right? So that doesn't make sense. And so we showed up to the 6 or 6:30 o'clock game, anticipating the fact that it'll be close, but we'll probably lose and we'll head home. Well, the game was very tight, and our players played really well, and our goalie played well, and all of a sudden, by the end of the game, it's a tie score. We're going into overtime. In overtime, nobody scored, so they go to a double overtime, and now it's 4 skaters on 4 skaters. But halfway through overtime, I'll never forget it. My son is on the ice with a very good skater. His name is Josh, and they're out there, and they're coming towards the net, and Josh goes on the outside with the puck, and Micah heads towards the net. And again, it's just 4 on 4, so the other skaters are at the back. They're tired, and Josh kind of comes through, and there's 2 defensemen there, but they kind of both go to him. And the way he just turned and the way they were anticipating the puck, that whack, they just hit together. And everyone's like, ooh, what happened? And the puck squirts out, and the goalie's kind of out of position. And my son, who was standing beside the net, jumps back and on one leg, kind of scoops the puck and puts it into the net. And the game is over. Double overtime win. We win. Which immediately I thought, that's the most expensive goal I will ever witness, because now we have to pay for another hotel. No, we're happy for you to win, but that was the most expensive goal ever. But everybody goes back to the dressing room, and they're all just so ecstatic. I can't believe we made the finals, that we got this far, and everybody's congratulating Micah on scoring the double overtime goal. But we went over to talk to Josh, and we made a very strong point to tell everybody who would celebrate with Micah that Micah happened to score the winning goal, but to celebrate Micah's story of winning is also to celebrate Josh's story, because there's no way Micah gets that puck to score if Josh doesn't do everything he does. There's no way Micah puts that puck in if Josh isn't strong and able to cut through and dig and get to the point where he's at. So really, to celebrate Micah's goal is to celebrate Josh. And I share that little story because I think that's kind of what we were reading about this week in our text in Acts chapter 13. We studied the people of Israel, right? Paul is giving this sermon on the life of the people and telling their story, but really to tell their story is to tell a God story. Because it's not just the fact that they moved from place to place and had success here and they continue to persevere and look where they are now. Paul's making reference to the fact that this is your story, but to show your story is to share God's story of God's leading and God's persevering and God speaking and God doing great things and God sending the Messiah, Jesus Christ. And then there's that passage where even when they thought they had killed the Messiah and they had put to stop, everything that God had been doing, but God rose him from the grave, and but God gave forgiveness and justification of sin. And so we have all of this come to a head, this but God moment where life isn't about just recalling our story, but it's recalling God's story and God's moving in our life and God's victory and redemption and reconciliation and resurrection. And it's because we have these but God moments. And I hope it's been inspiring for you or challenging for you, because this whole series has been about, this has been our thinking, but God says something different. This has been our understanding, our assumption, our life, but God shows up and does something different. And where we may have experienced life events, and this is our story. Really, our story should be a but God story, right? Our story should reflect God's leading and God's guiding what God has done. And I pray that yours does. I pray that by you telling your story, you're able to share a God story, because your life reflects the greatness and work of God in your life. I just pray that we would be able to not let life dictate who we are and let life write our story, but we would allow these but God moments. We would walk in faith with God so that our story could be a God story. We'd let God write the story of our life. And I pray that we're able to do that. That means journeying with Him. That means walking by faith. That means communing with Him, connecting with Him by reading His Word and praying and worshiping. But as we surrender our life, we're excited to know what the days ahead are as we follow God and He writes the story of our life. I pray that this 50-day journey has been good for you. Again, if you have anything you've learned or studied and put into practice, God has shown you, revealed to you, I'd love to know about it. I'd love to do coffee. I'd love to hear your story. But I just pray at the end of it that we would put into practice this but God understanding, this God theme, this but God theme, and realize that life does not need to write our story, but God can. And I pray that we can walk in an attitude of surrender and worship and allow Him to write our story. God bless. Have a great week and see you Sunday.